There's probably nobody out there happier with what's going on with the MCU than James Gunn and the DCU. We got the Marvels bombing. We've got all these casting rumors that people, for the most part, don't seem to like. And James Gunn is just sitting out there, not in the spotlight anymore, as everyone is concentrating their eye on the MCU and all those failures. But we do have the DCU kicking off in the not too distant future. I imagine principal photography will start with Superman Legacy in the not too distant future, certainly within the next few months to meet that 2025 release date that they're shooting for. And James Gunn has his work cut out for him. He's cast Superman and Lois. He's cast a bunch of other heroes in Superman Legacy. And now it's time to cast Lex Luthor, the big bad, the main honcho, the arch nemesis of Superman himself. And we've also got some rumors. Apparently there's a rumor about one of the main overarching story arcs regarding Superman Legacy that James Gunn himself has shot down, but there's a little bit more smoke to that as well. So we'll hit Lex Luthor. We'll talk about those rumors and James Gunn's response to it, and talk about the DCU for a change, just for a change. In one of the most significant new castings post-SAG-AFTRA strike, Superman Legacy has found its Lex Luthor, with Nicholas Hoult in talks to star as a classic villain. No deal is done, but talks have been in the works since before the strike. David Corenswet will star as Clark Kent Superman, while Rachel Brosnahan is playing Lois Lane, with the duo landing the roles in June after a lengthy casting search. Holt was long in contention for the role of Lex Luthor, but also put his hat in the ring to play Superman and was one of the finalists for that role. If you're a fan of superhero movies, you'll probably know who Nicholas Hoult is. He's the guy that played Beast, like in the prequel X-Men movies. Remember when those came out and he was part of like the First Class kind of team up there? I think he did a pretty good job. I don't think his casting was nearly as good as Kelsey Grammer as like Beast in X3, which is a terrible movie, but Kelsey Grammer in theory should be like the perfect Beast or whatever. But he was good. He stood out as pretty good. You know, they were talking about Nicholas Hoult playing Clark Kent Superman. I thought that was really, really, really strange. He didn't really feel like a Superman. He doesn't feel really all-American. And now him playing Lex Luthor feels maybe just as strange. Like Lex Luthor has a certain gravitas to him to where a lot of people would like him. Like you would want to like him, but he also has to have that dickhead kind of vibe to him. And I don't know that Nicholas Hoult is going to have that, but obviously we don't know until we see it on the screen. But this certainly is an enormous step up from Jesse Eisenberg, who was Lex Luthor during the Man of Steel movie. Just what terrible casting that was. And just once again, Zack Snyder not understanding who the characters are and what they're supposed to represent. You know, deciding that Lex Luthor should no longer be this character with like an electricity to him, that he should be like Mark Zuckerberg, because Jesse Eisenberg had played him in The Social Network or whatever. And certainly he did a really good job in that movie, but he just had the wrong feel whatsoever. Obviously, we've seen a lot of Lex Luthors in movies. I personally like Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor. It felt like a golden age kind of Lex Luthor, silver age kind of Lex Luthor. Obviously, we also had Kevin Spacey as Lex Luthor, even though I kind of think that one's better casting than even Gene Hackman, and I think Gene Hackman was good. But Superman Returns is not a very good movie. But Kevin Spacey, you know, as Lex Luthor kind of works. He's got that personality where you could see where people would be drawn to him, but you also shouldn't trust him either. You know what I mean? Like, I think John Hamm would be perfect casting as Lex Luthor in Superman Legacy. You know, he's got that magnetism, he's got that charm to him, but there's also like that dickish thing to him as well, where you could understand, like, I don't trust him, but I can see why other people might like him. So I do think this is interesting casting, and obviously casting news is going to be picking up now that the SAG-AFTRA strike is coming up. And we do have some rumors about what version of Lex Luthor this is going to be. According to scooper Daniel Richman, aka Daniel RPK, Gunn's take on Superman's arch foe will take direct inspiration from the early double aughts era of DC Comics. As Legacy, we'll see Luthor making a bid at the American presidency. Should this rumor shake out to be true, it would not be out of question to see Luthor's political power play being used as a narrative vehicle with which to bring him into conflict with not just Superman and Lois, but also their confirmed superhero co-stars Hawkgirl, Mr. Terrific, Guy Gardner, Metamorpho, and the Engineer. And I do think this is a good place to go with Lex Luthor for Superman Legacy. We've seen a lot of different iterations of Lex Luthor, not just on the big screen. You know, I've already mentioned, you know, we did get Gene Hackman, Kevin Spacey. We also got Jesse Eisenberg, but we've also seen Lex Luthor on the small screen. He was a huge part of Smallville and some of the other television shows that have been out there. So we've seen a lot of different versions of Lex Luthor. We've never really seen the one that is a political power, a guy that could be, president of the United States of America, President Luthor. I think this is a good way to go because we haven't really seen that, certainly not on the big screen. And I think that's a really good idea and direction to go with the character, to where he doesn't even really need to be the main bad guy in the first movie. He can be there and you can see what's going on, setting him up as a big villain. And really, he wouldn't even need to be on screen. You could just have it, news reports in the background covering it, or there could be signs and stuff like that talking about Lex Luthor for president or whatever, kind of leading up. And it would be a good way to tell the story and leading up this new contemporary version of Lex Luthor that's kind of a more of a political savvy kind of guy that is not only a big player in Metropolis, but on the world stage as well. So I think that's a good idea. And once again, Nicholas Hoult doesn't feel like, I don't know, a politician. He doesn't feel like Lex Luthor that's running for president. He doesn't feel like President Luthor. But he is a pretty good actor. There's a good chance he's going to be able to pull that one off. But I do think they probably could have used some more inspired casting. I understand. I guess James Gunn does want a younger version of the cast that'll be able to stay in the roles for a long time. But I would prefer a Lex Luthor that's significantly older than David Cornsweet and the rest of the cast. That would make sense that he's aspiring for political power that goes even further than Metropolis or whatever. And I don't think Nicholas Hoult really screams like future presidential candidate or somebody with that kind of gravitas, just as a physical presence, just the way he kind of looks. So I think they might be making a mistake there, but I do like the idea of where they're taking Lex Luthor in the future. Now, there were some rumors out there, and we've heard this one kind of since the very beginning, that somehow the Middle East was going to play a big part in that. Obviously, things have been changing pretty rapidly as of late regarding things in the Middle East with respect to the initial announcement and rumors that came out. Oh my goodness, was that a year ago? It was a long time ago. According to Scooper, industry insider Daniel RPK reported that part of Legacy's plot would be about a conflict in the Middle East involving the fictional country of Bialya. Later, Scooper reviewer Anon corroborated the report, adding that terrorists have gotten a hold of Kryptonian tech in the film. This has been viewed as controversial and possibly insensitive considering the ongoing war between Palestine and Israel, as well as other political conflicts throughout the Middle East. After being prompted by a comment on a recent Instagram post by James Gunn, the director debunked the report of a conflict in the Middle East in Superman Legacy. The user asked Gunn to please confirm that the controversial plot isn't true. Gunn responded, simply stating, "It isn't true." And I do think that's interesting because we have heard reports that in the early goings in Superman's early career, something of significance would happen in the Middle East. Obviously, I hadn't heard reports that it was going to be like terrorism related or terrorists getting a hold of Kryptonian tech. That's more of a new addition to the rumors that have been out there. But James Gunn going out there and saying that is absolutely not true. The thing you have to remember is James Gunn, I don't want to say he's lied, but he certainly has told some things that aren't 100% correct in a lot of his responses. And the information that he's put out there maybe would be true from a certain point of view, but if you just look at it factually, hasn't been completely true. So I don't know about this one, but there was a follow-up to that. Scooper Casey Walsh is offering clarification. So for clarification, the plot does not center on the Middle East. It's merely a location to represent a conflict zone that is the catalyst of the movie's events. It's not something you keep revisiting, and the location itself is unimportant. So there's another Scooper stating while the terrorism part isn't really integral to the plot itself and not everything is taking place in the Middle East, there will be a scene early on that takes place there that's like a catalyst for future events and where the story goes from there. We shall see. I don't think putting an event or scene happening in the Middle East should be all that controversial, although people are very, very sensitive right now. And who knows, there's a decent chance that James Gunn has already gone and rewrote the script like 2 or 3 times since those initial rumors came out. So maybe initially it was going to be a part of it and now it's been removed. Or maybe people are overselling just how important this scene taking place in the Middle East is going to be to the story itself. But James Gunn says it's not true. It's not happening, but people are still pretty convinced that something will happen there. I don't think that's going to be a huge deal regarding the events of Superman Legacy and whether or not it's successful or not. It's all going to be up to the casting. I'm not completely overwhelmed at this point, but David Cornsweet does not offend me as Clark Kent Superman. He looks a whole lot like the last guy they had to play Superman. He's just a few years younger, I guess. And we'll see how this kind of all plays out. I do think there are far too many heroes that have been cast and placed into this movie. Like, why is Hawkgirl, Metamorpho, Mr. Terrific? Like, why are all these heroes here if you're trying to establish Superman? But I guess from what I understand, David Zaslav and the execs at Warner Brothers specifically wanted him to hammer more DC heroes into the movie. I don't know, it's a proof of concept, maybe for a future sale. That's the big rumor that's been going out there for a while. But there is one thing that's absolutely true. James Gunn has taken over as the co-president of DC Studios now. It's not the DCEU, it's the DCU. We've seen the last remnants of the DCEU trickle out to no acclaim, no fanfare. A whole lot of money has been lost in the process, and we still have Aquaman and Lost Kingdom rolling out for the holiday season this year, and then the DCEU basically will be done. And we're waiting for the DCU. Certainly not an enviable position that James Gunn and Peter Safran and everyone associated with DC Studios is in right now, to where there is no momentum. There's no real excitement around anything other than maybe the Batman sequel, maybe Joker 2, whatever that stupid title of that one is. Not a whole lot of people looking for a shared DC movie universe these days. He's going to have to work really hard on that and change people's minds. But it might already be too late. I've kind of talked about this with all the negativity and all the failure that's been going around this. James Gunn might already be in a position of no winning. It might be dead before it ever gets started. There's also a link in the video description.